Central Park is an urban park in New York City, between the Upper West and Upper East sides of Manhattan. It is the fifth largest park in the city, covering 843 acres, 341 hectares. It is the most visited urban park in the United States, with an estimated 42 million visitors annually as of 2016, and is the most filmed location in the world. After proposals for a large park in Manhattan during the 1840s, it was approved in 1853 to cover 778 acres, 315 hectares. In 1857, landscape architects Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux won a design competition for the park with their Greensward plan. Construction began the same year. Existing structures, including a majority black settlement named Seneca Village, were seized through eminent domain and razed. The park's first areas were opened to the public in late 1858. Additional land at the northern end of Central Park was purchased in 1859, and the park was completed in 1876. After a period of decline in the early 20th century, New York City Parks Commissioner Robert Moses started a program to clean up Central Park in the 1930s. The Central Park Conservancy, created in 1980 to combat further deterioration in the late 20th century, refurbished many parts of the park starting in the 1980s. Main attractions include landscapes such as the Ramble and Lake, Hallett Nature Sanctuary, the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir, and Sheep Meadow. Amusement attractions such as Wallman Rink, Central Park Carousel, and the Central Park Zoo. Formal spaces such as the Central Park Mall and Bethesda Terrace, and the Delacorte Theater. The biologically diverse ecosystem has several hundred species of flora and fauna. Recreational activities include carriage horse and bicycle tours, bicycling, sports facilities, and concerts and events such as Shakespeare in the Park. Central Park is traversed by a system of roads and walkways and is served by public transportation. Its size and cultural position make it a model for the world's urban parks. Its influence earned Central Park the designations of National Historic Landmark in 1963 and of New York City Scenic Landmark in 1974. Central Park is owned by the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation but has been managed by the Central Park Conservancy since 1998, under a contract with the municipal government in a public-private partnership. The Conservancy, a nonprofit organization, raises Central Park's annual operating budget and is responsible for all basic care of the park. Between 1821 and 1855, New York City's population nearly quadrupled. As the city expanded northward up Manhattan Island, people were drawn to the few existing open spaces, mainly cemeteries, for passive recreation. These were seen as escapes from the noise and chaotic life in the city, which at the time was almost entirely centered on Lower Manhattan. The Commissioner's Plan of 1811, the outline for Manhattan's modern street grid, included several smaller open spaces but not Central Park. As such, John Randall Jr. had surveyed the grounds for the construction of intersections within the modern-day park site. The only remaining surveying bolt from his survey is embedded in a rock north of the present dairy and the 66th Street transverse, marking the location where West 65th Street would have intersected 6th Avenue. By the 1840s, members of the city's elite were publicly calling for the construction of a new large park in Manhattan. At the time, Manhattan's 17 squares comprised a combined 165 acres, 67 hectares, of land, the largest of which was the 10-acre, 4 hectares. Battery Park at Manhattan Island's southern tip. These plans were endorsed in 1844 by New York Evening Post editor William Cullen Bryant, and in 1851 by Andrew Jackson Downing, one of the first American landscape designers. Mayor Ambrose Kingsland, in a message to the New York City Common Council on May 5, 1851, set forth the necessity and benefits of a large new park and proposed the council move to create such a park. Kingsland's proposal was referred to the council's Committee of Lands, which endorsed the proposal. The committee chose Jones's Wood, a 160-acre, 65 hectares, tract of land between 66th and 75th Streets on the Upper East Side, as the park's site, as Bryant had advocated for Jones Wood. The acquisition was controversial because of its location, small size relative to other potential uptown tracts, and cost. A bill to acquire Jones's Wood was invalidated as unconstitutional, so attention turned to a second site, a 750-acre, 300 hectares area known as Central Park, bounded by 59th and 106th Streets between 5th and 8th Avenues. Croton Aqueduct Board President Nicholas Dean, who proposed the Central Park site, chose it because the Croton Aqueduct's 35-acre, 14 hectares, 150 million US gallon, 570 times 106 L collecting reservoir would be in the geographical center. In July 1853, the New York State Legislature passed the Central Park Act, authorizing the purchase of the present-day site of Central Park. The Board of Land Commissioners conducted property assessments in more than 34,000 lots in the area, completing them by July 1855. While the assessments were ongoing, proposals to downsize the plans were vetoed by Mayor Fernando Wood. At the time, the site was occupied by free black people and Irish immigrants who had developed a property-owning community there since 1825. Most of the Central Park site's residents lived in small villages, such as Pigtown, Seneca Village, or in the school and convent at Mount St. Vincent's Academy. Clearing began shortly after the Land Commission's report was released in October 1855, and approximately 1,600 residents were evicted under eminent domain. Though supporters claimed that the park would cost just $1.7 million, the total cost of the land ended up being $7.39 million, equivalent to $215 million in 2021, more than the price that the United States would pay for Alaska a few years later. In June 1856, Fernando Wood appointed a consulting board of 7 people, headed by author Washington Irving, to inspire public confidence in the proposed development. Wood hired military engineer Egbert Ludovicus Vila as the park's chief engineer, tasking him with a topographical survey of the site. The following April, the state legislature passed a bill to authorize the appointment of 4 Democratic and 7 Republican commissioners, who had exclusive control over the planning and construction process. Though Vila had already devised a plan for the park, the commissioners disregarded it and retained him to complete only the topographical surveys. The Central Park Commission began hosting a landscape design contest shortly after its creation. The commission specified that each entry contain extremely detailed specifications, as mandated by the consulting board. 33 firms or organizations submitted plans. In April 1858, the park commissioners selected Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaux's Greensward Plan as the winning design. 3 other plans were designated as runners-up and featured in a city exhibit. Unlike many of the other designs, which effectively integrated Central Park with the surrounding city, Olmsted and Vaux's proposal introduced clear separations with sunken transverse roadways. The plan eschewed symmetry, instead opting for a more picturesque design. It was influenced by the pastoral ideals of landscaped cemeteries such as Mount Auburn in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Greenwood in Brooklyn. The design was also inspired by Olmsted's 1850 visit to Birkenhead Park, in the Liverpool City region in England, which is generally acknowledged as the first publicly funded civil park in the world. According to Olmsted, the park was of great importance as the first real park made in this country, a democratic development of the highest significance. By the 1870s, the park's patrons increasingly came to include the middle and working class, and strict regulations were gradually eased, such as those against public gatherings. Because of the heightened visitor count, neglect by the Tammany administration, and budget cuts demanded by taxpayers, the maintenance expenses for Central Park had reached a nadir by 1879. Olmsted blamed politicians, real estate owners, and park workers for Central Park's decline, though high maintenance costs were also a factor. By the 1890s, the park faced several challenges. Cars were becoming commonplace, and with the proliferation of amusements and refreshment stands, people were beginning to see the park as a recreational attraction. The 1904 opening of the New York City subway displaced Central Park as the city's predominant leisure destination, as New Yorkers could travel to farther destinations such as Coney Island beaches or Broadway theaters for a 5-cent fare. In the late 19th century, the landscape architect Samuel Parsons took the position of New York City Parks superintendent. A one-time apprentice of Calvert Vaux, Parsons helped restore the nurseries of Central Park in 1886. Parsons closely followed Olmsted's original vision for the park, restoring Central Park's trees while blocking the placement of several large statues in the park. Under Parsons' leadership, 2 circles, now Duke Ellington and Frederick Douglass circles, were constructed at the northern corners of the park. He was removed in May 1911 following a lengthy dispute over whether an expense to replace the soil in the park was unnecessary. A succession of Tammany-affiliated Democratic mayors were indifferent toward Central Park. Several park advocacy groups were formed in the early 20th century. To preserve the park's character, the Citywide Parks and Playground Association, and a consortium of multiple Central Park civic groups operating under the Parks Conservation Association, were formed in the 1900s and 1910s. These associations advocated against such changes to the park as the construction of a library, sports stadium, a cultural center, and an underground parking lot. A third group, the Central Park Association, was created in 1926. The Central Park Association and the Parks and Playgrounds Association were merged into the Park Association of New York City 2 years later. There are 4 different types of bedrock in Manhattan. In Central Park, Manhattan schist and Heartland schist, which are both metamorphosed sedimentary rock, are exposed in various outcroppings. The other 2 types, Fordham gneiss, an older deeper layer, and Inwood marble, metamorphosed limestone which overlays the gneiss, do not surface in the park. Fordham gneiss, which consists of metamorphosed igneous rocks, was formed a billion years ago, during the Grenville orogeny that occurred during the creation of an ancient supercontinent. Manhattan schist and Heartland schist were formed in the Iapetus Ocean during the Taconic orogeny in the Paleozoic era, about 450 million years ago, when the tectonic plates began to merge to form the supercontinent Pangaea. Cameron's Line, a fault zone that traverses Central Park on an east-west axis, divides the outcroppings of Heartland schist to the south and Manhattan schist to the north. There are 3 wooded areas in Central Park: North Woods, the Ramble, and Hallett Nature Sanctuary. North Woods, the largest of the woodlands, is at the northwestern corner of Central Park. It covers about 90 acres, 36 hectares, adjacent to North Meadow. The name sometimes applies to other attractions in the park's northern end. These adjacent features plus the area of North Woods can be 200 acres, 81 hectares. North Woods contains the 55-acre, 22 hectares ravine, a forest with deciduous trees on its northwestern slope, and the Loch, a small stream that winds diagonally through North Woods. Central Park is home to numerous bodies of water. The northernmost lake, Harlem Mere, is near the northeastern corner of the park and covers nearly 11 acres, 4.5 hectares. Located in a wooded area of oak, cypress, and beech trees, it was named after Harlem, one of Manhattan's first suburban communities, and was built after the completion of the southern portion of the park. Harlem Mere allows catch and release fishing. It is fed by 2 interconnected water features: the Pool, a pond within the North Woods fed by drinking water, and the Loch, a small stream with 3 cascades that winds through the North Woods. These are all adapted from a single watercourse called Montaigne's Rivulet, originally fed from a natural spring but later replenished by the city's water system. Lasker Rink is above the mouth of the Loch where it drains into the Harlem Mere. Central Park is biologically diverse. A 2013 survey of park species by William E. Macaulay Honors College found 571 total species, including 173 species that were not previously known to live there. According to a 2011 survey, Central Park had more than 20,000 trees, representing a decrease from the 26,000 trees that were recorded in the park in 1993. The majority of them are native to New York City, but there are several clusters of non-native species. With few exceptions, the trees in Central Park were mostly planted or placed manually. Over 4 million trees, shrubs, and plants representing approximately 1,500 species were planted or imported to the park. In Central Park's earliest years, 2 plant nurseries were maintained within the park boundaries: a demolished nursery near the Arsenal, and the still extant conservatory garden. Central Park Conservancy later took over regular maintenance of the park's flora, allocating gardeners to one of 49 zones for maintenance purposes.